Thank you very much. In terms of context, as we all of us are so consciously aware, is really the fact that this meeting is taking place at the time when the COVID-19 pandemic has become a reality of our life. And I was watching as I was watching the news this morning, they report that the US, Brazil, and India account for 50% of the global daily infections. And we all know very well that amongst others, we've had an experience of losing the MEC of Copta in Northwest, and we've lost many others. And this just emphasizes the reality of the challenge. Having said that, honorable members, let me take this opportunity to remind delegates that the rules apply, and that amongst others we should note the following. That the virtual sitting constitutes a sitting of the National Council of Provinces, and the place of the sitting is deemed to be Cape Town, where the seat of the National Council of Provinces is. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Council of Provinces, including the rules of debate, apply. Delegates should note that anything sent to everyone via the chat screen is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. Delegates enjoy, honorable members, the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. And for the purpose of the quorum, all delegates who logged in shall be considered to be present. And for the duration of the sitting, delegates must mute their microphones unless they wish to speak. Any delegate who wishes to speak should use the raise your hand function. I'm sure members are by now familiar with this function. Honorable delegates, please note that the interpretation facility is active, and delegates are reminded to please keep their videos on for the duration of the sitting. I would now like to take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Bartlett, the new permanent delegate representing the Northern Cape Province. Honorable Bartlett, as we all know, replaces Honorable Goia. So we say welcome to Honorable Bartlett, and we wish Honorable Goia well in all his endeavors as we move into the future. So wish him well in whatever responsibility he'll now be assuming. To move honorable members and delegate, I will now take this opportunity to indicate that we'll now be dealing with the motions. First, notices of motions, and later motions without notice. I will now allow the opportunity to members to go ahead and lead us in that process of motions. So we'll start with notices of motions, and I hope that members have raised their hands through the function, raise your hand function, as indicated earlier. So firstly is notice of motions, and we'll start with Honorable, I see that on my screen here. The first person is Honorable Lund.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move that this House debates the positives and or negatives of the recent audit outcomes as released by the Auditor General under the theme, "Not much to go around, yet not the right hands at the till." That the debate have a special focus why it is that some municipalities continuously are able to deliver good audit results versus others that continuously show bad financial management. I so move.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to the next? Person to speak it's Honorable Sheikh, according to raise your hand function.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of the ANC, I hereby give notice that in the next sitting of the Council, I shall move that the Council notes and debates the evictions that are being carried out by the City of Cape Town in the midst of clear gazetted regulations that prohibit any eviction during the national lockdown, and further notes the evictions, which have been going on for quite some time, were highlighted by the recent inhuman, denigrating, and undignified eviction of Bulelani Kolani from his shack whilst being naked. I so move.
Thank you very much. The next motion is from Honorable Mwita from the Eastern Cape. Honorable Mwita.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, I move that on the sitting of Council, I shall move that the Council notes the debate on Nelson Mandela International Day, which day declared by the United Nations to take place on the 18th in recognition of the former South African president's contribution to global peace and freedom. Further notes that the resolution to commemorate Mandela's long-standing commitment to promoting conflict resolution, race relations, human rights, reconciliation, and gender equality remains an iconic recognition of the indelible legacy of Tata Mandela and a global appreciation of a great man who had suffered for the sake of greater humanity and the legendary human being who harbored no hate, no grudges, but stood firm in defense of justice, peace, democracy to the Black majority in South Africa and other oppressed individuals around the country. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Meta. The next name is that of Honorable George Mikalakis.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move that at its next sitting, this House debates the interventions in terms of Section 100 and 139 of the Constitution. I so move.
Thank you very much. The next name is that of Honorable Arnold.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters to propose that at the next sitting, the Council debates the City of Cape Town Western Cape eviction policy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Arnold. We'll move to Honorable Makause.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters that in its next sitting, the Council debate the scourge of violence caused by drugs in our communities. A specific focus in measures to be put in place to capacitate the South African police in dealing with drug lords, just as they dealt with the alcohol outlets during COVID-19. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honorable Matebula.
Mr. Chairperson, I rise on behalf of the EFF to propose that the Council debate the failure by the Department of Water and Sanitation as well as the Department of Education to provide water to 37 schools in the Greater Guyana municipality in Limpopo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last person is Honorable D. Matangu. Yes.
Chairperson, thank you. I rise on behalf of the African National Congress, give a notice that in the next sitting of the Council, I shall move that the Council notes with utter disdain and debates with utmost urgency the persistent, tempted, and brutal killing of women and gender-based violence in our communities. Takes this opportunity to condemn the heinous and brutal murder of Tshegofatso Pule and her unborn baby, Naledi Phangitawayo, Nompumelelo Tsaka, Nomfazi Babada, Nyambisa Mkwadela, Alessia Korti, and 6-year-old Renesia Korti, and joins the people of South Africa to lend a laudable voice to the clarion call to wage a concerted battle against gender-based violence in all its guises in our society, and ensure that Parliament and government takes a lead to ensure that South Africa moves with greater speed in expecting the femicide legislation and ensure minimum sentences in case of gender-based violence and set stringent bail conditions for those suspended for gender-based violence. I so move, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mashangu. We will now proceed to motions without notice.
My hand was up, Chair.
Yes, Ekhai.
Zandamela.
Oh, Zandamela. Okay.
Yes.
You'll be the last one, Zandamela.
No, thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf.
Yes.
No, thanks, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the EFF that the House in the next sitting debate the evictions that happened during lockdown by municipal public safety officials in Gauteng, in the ANC-led municipalities and the evictions that happened in Mpumalanga, in Emalahleni. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zamdamela. We'll now move on to honorable members to motions without notice. Again, we will, so as to remind members, use the raise your hand function. 1.5 minutes per motion. And I have a list here of people who have indicated that they want to present motions without notice. And as I do so, of course, I'll compare my notes here with what we have in the raise your hand function. So the first person, the honorable members, is Honorable S.J. Moai.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council knows with great sense of loss and sadness of the passing of Manzi Ellen Mashatile, the wife of the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, Comrade Paul Mashatile. Further knows that this double tragedy for the Mashatile family happens barely 2 weeks after the burial of his mother, Miriam Nomvola Mashatile, who passed away on June 20 at the age of 82. That the Council takes this opportunity to convey its heartfelt condolences to the ANC Treasurer General and his family, and wishes him strength and fortitude in this difficult time, and hope the family will find strength and pull through. And as the ANC, we are deeply saddened that this double tragedy takes time when the Treasurer General has just taken time to isolate after one of the staff members in his office tested positive for COVID-19. We wish him good health. So I so move. Thank you, Chairperson.
Any objection to the motion? I guess none. The motion is agreed to. The next person is Honorable H.S. Boshoff.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair. On behalf of the DA, I hereby move that this House notes with concern that the Mpumalanga Education Department may not be able to comply with the required COVID-19 protocols and regulations because of a budget shortfall. Further notes that the department's officials reported to the Finance Committee that the Department of Education had a budget pressure of 3.3 billion. Also notes that the department acknowledged that they will be unable to provide 149 mobile classrooms to the value of 43 million, which was to assist overcrowding in schools. Again notes that no upgrades or any additions to schools on sanitation and water will be done in the 2021 financial year, as the department does not have the necessary finances. Recognizes that the Mpumalanga Education Department will therefore only be able to provide stationery to the learners and no new textbooks or any other LTSM. Again notes that under a DA government, this would not happen, as the livelihoods of learners would be at the forefront to ensure that they are provided with a clean and healthy environment together with the necessary LTSM. I so move.
If there are no objection, we'll move on. There's an objection there. Thank you very much. This motion will now become a notice of a motion and be printed in full on the next order paper. Honorable Khai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the House notes that the Eastern Cape's most overwhelmed hospitals will be assisted by a military medical team of 75 doctors and nurses deployed to the province. Further notes that the troubled hospital set to receive the much needed relief will be Doranginza and Livingston Hospital, both in Port Elizabeth, Frey Hospital in East London, Nelson Mandela Academic in Tata, Frontier Hospital in Komani, Tower Psychiatric Hospital in Fort Beaufort. Also notes that this medical team will join and assist the Eastern Cape team that has dedicated their services to save the lives of the people of the Eastern Cape. And therefore take this opportunity to express its profound appreciation to our healthcare workers for their continued dedication and care for COVID-19 patients. I so move.
Thank you very much. If there's no objection, the motion is therefore agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Ocamp.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes with concern the irrational and unjustified high increase of rates and taxes by the Gamagara local municipality in the Northern Cape, which municipality implemented an increase of 10% on rates and taxes, this when the inflation rate is at 3%. Also notes that it is unacceptable for the Gamagara local municipality to implement this 10% increase when the increases that were recommended by National Treasury were between 4% and 6%. Also notes that the residents in certain parts of Gamagara are without water on a frequent basis, and that this house also notes that this local municipality has not maintained its infrastructure for years, leading to the near collapse of service delivery. Further notes that we as the DA has on numerous occasions called on this municipality to fulfill its obligations towards service delivery for the people of Gamagara, but to no avail. I so move.
Thank you very much. Any objections?
Objection.
Yes. Motions objected to. So we'll then put the motion aside, and it will become now a notice of a motion. Honorable Armand Klute.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Freedom Front Plus, I wish to move that this House notes with concern that Free State farmers will this year receive no drought relief in terms of the national state of disaster. Further, be concerned of the fact that the Free State government failed to submit a business plan to apply for these funds in time, as was confirmed by the National Department of Agriculture. Further notes that the provincial government were given an opportunity until the 5th of June this year to submit such business plans after the national drought state of disaster was declared on the 4th of March 2020. The available 39 million that was earmarked for the national drought state of disaster was accordingly divided among the provinces that had submitted their applications in time. This House recognizes that, like COVID-19 and any disaster, droughts are equalizers that affects all South Africans, but particularly farmers and farm workers whose livelihoods depend on government's assistance during droughts. Also notes that farmers across the province have had to endure severe droughts for years on end, yet they will not have any drought relief, possibly because of the provincial government's irresponsible act. This House resolved that the Free State government's failure to submit an application should be investigated by the relevant select committee and report to this House why Free State farmers will not receive drought relief. I so move.
Objection.
If there's an objection, and therefore the motion will not be proceeded with, and become a notice of a motion. The next speaker is Honorable Mula from Mpumalanga.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, thank you, Chairperson, and good morning. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the ANC that the House notes that with utmost concern and condemnation that the owner of Western Cape Meadows Farm near St. Albans in Port Elizabeth has been accused of attempting to evict people living on her property for removing their roof and switching off their services. Further notes that according to the owner, Elma Rotten 2005
We'll ask the table
dwellers who used to work for Angisi Spielman, the farm since 19. Also notes that Mbangisi Spielman, 62, said he has lived on the farm since 1974 and trouble started when Rottenberg bought the farm and asked them to sign papers and accept 20,000 as a compensation to leave the farm, which they refused, and therefore takes the opportunity to call on the Department of Rural Development to intervene and defend these farm workers from victimization and illegal eviction. I so move.
Thank you very much. Any objections? None. This being the case, the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. The next speaker is going to Honorable J.J. Lont.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that this House convey its deepest and most sincere condolences to the immediate family, friends, colleagues, and the broader community of Langeberg after the passing of Mayor Henry Jansen yesterday. Hendrik Matthews Jansen, better known only as Henry, was born in McGregor in 1955 and grew up in the Agterkliphoogte area. After matriculating, he worked as a farm worker before being promoted to a managerial position. In 1994, Henry was elected to the Transitional Representative Council and soon afterwards as the president of the Farm Workers Association. He was elected mayor of the Breerivier Wynland municipality in 2001, and in 2006 he joined the Cape Winelands District Municipality, becoming the deputy mayor there for 5 years. Since 2016, Henry served as the executive mayor for Langeberg local municipality. Henry believed in bringing only the best services to a community he dedicated his life to serving. To Auntie Macy, his 3 sons and 2 daughters, we are truly sorry for your loss. Our prayers are with you in this difficult time. May God grant you the comfort you need in the midst of the pain. Thank you for sharing your husband, your father, your confidant, your brother, and your leader with us in the time he was blessed to have with us on earth. I so move.
Thank you very much. Any objection? No objection. So the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. The next speaker is going to be Honorable Mletsane.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the economic freedom fighters. The House note the sad departure of fighter Makatu Silo, well known as Ntunda. Fighter further notes that Fighter Silo was the first chairperson of the EFF in Ward 7 in Machabeng in the Free State. Recognize the contribution he made towards building the organization and by extension, towards building and strengthening democracy in this country. Further notes that Fighter Silo will be laid to rest this coming Saturday at his home in Welkom. Condolences to his family, friends, and fellow fighters. I so move.
There's the motion. Any objection? None. And the motion is therefore agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. The next person to speak will be Honorable Detroit.
Voorzitter, ek gee namens die Vryheidsfront Plus kennis dat die huis Kennis neem dat plaasaanvalle, plaasmoorde en grondgrype met rasseskrede toeneem. Verder kennis neem dat daar sommige politici is wat roekelose uitlatings maak wat rassehaat aanblaas en verdeeldheid en polarisasie veroorsaak. In ag neem dat president Ramaphosa nie standpunt inneem oor plaasaanvalle en moorde nie. Ook in ag neem dat soos ander misdade, byvoorbeeld transitoerooftogte en bendegeweld, daar 'n behoefte is om plaasaanvalle as 'n prioriteitsmisdaad te verklaar. Kennis neem dat die burgery nie meer die slagoffer sal wees nie. Die huis moet kennis neem dat 4 met 4 beveg sal word binne die raamwerk van die wet. Dankie.
Thank you very much. Any objection? None. There being no objection, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Mfaela is the next person to speak. Honorable Mfaela, are you there? Otherwise, we'll move back to the list and try and get Honorable Landsman to speak. Landsman?
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, I move motion without notice, notes with the utmost sadness and grief the untimely death of MEC Corporate Governance and Human Settlements and Traditional Affairs, MEC Gordon Kihakilwe, on Monday, 6 July 2020, a COVID-related illness. Future note that MEC Kihakilwe was qualified educator and advocate for tertiary education, and on several occasions tried to create study opportunities for young people who were faced with financial exclusion from pursuing their studies due to poverty. Acknowledge that MEC Kihakilwe, one of the finest astute and distinguished members of the African National Congress, who served the people in Northwest with utmost humanity and dedication until his untimely death, and take this opportunity to convey its deepest condolences to the Kihakilwe family, the ANC, the people of Northwest. I so move.
Any objections? No objection. The motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Bebe is the next to speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council notes with profound sadness and grief the death of iconic South Africa actress Umama Umeri Twala, the mother of well-known celebrity Somizi Mhlongo. Further notes that Umama Mary Twala, who died at the age of 80, was a legendary star of the stage and screen, and leaves behind a profound legacy of a long career of inspiration. And the Council notes that in 2019, Umama Mary Twala was bestowed the Order of Ikamanga in silver by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and it takes this opportunity to convey its heartfelt condolences and support to the family, friends, and colleagues of Umama Mary Twala. We thank dearly for sharing Umama Mary Twala with South Africa. I so move, Chair.
There's a motion. Any objections? There being no objection, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The next person to speak is Honorable George Mikalakis.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move that Council notes the latest regulations by the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture for the reopening of theatres. Further notes that although we welcome the fact that the sector can slowly begin to reopen, theatres are more than just movie cinemas, and that it is very difficult for real live theatres to be profitable under these circumstances. Also notes that only a handful of theatres in South Africa are small enough to make their reopening with a maximum of 50 patrons viable, and the vast majority will unfortunately still not be able to open due to a lack of financial sustainability, whilst performers and producers alike still suffer a devastating loss of income. Although some funds were availed to support artists, these funds were not sufficient or sufficiently spread across the sector and will soon be depleted. Further notes the immense contribution made by our live performers, our actors, dancers and musicians to the culture and fibre of our nation. And finally, that Council calls on the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture to also put further alternative measures in place to support as many artists as possible and across the board who can, despite these regulations, still not make ends meet and still not stage profitable productions due to the pandemic. I so move.
Any objections? None. There being no objection, the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Dango.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council notes with profound sadness and grief the death of veteran playwright Welcome Msomi on Saturday, the 4th July, after a short illness. It notes that Mr. Msomi was an accomplished writer and prolific novelist who wrote his first book at the age of 15 and made his name for himself in isiZulu literature. Mr. Msomi was the architect of the Durban Theatre, and I move that this council extends profound grief and condolences to his family and friends, and to the group that he played with. Thank you very much.
There's the motion. Any objections? No objection. There being no objection, the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Lihi from the EFF. Honorable Lesbi Lihi. No. Let's move on then to Honorable ML Mamarikhane. Honorable Mamarikhane. Honorable Mamarikhane from Limpopo. We'll move on to Honorable Bartlett. Honorable Bartlett.
Chairperson,
Yes.
ke re tlotlile modulasetulo wa ntlo ya bosetšhaba.
Okay.
At province. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council notes with utmost repugnance the reports of the rape of a 2-year-old child who was in isolation at Dr. Mukari Academic Hospital in Pretoria, and take this opportunity to call on the NEC of Health and the NEC for Police and Safety in Gauteng to ensure that this case is thoroughly investigated and that it receives the highest priority to ensure that the perpetrator faces the full might of the law and that those who are found to have been negligent are made to account. I so move, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's the motion. Any objection? There being no objection, the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Let's try and go back to Honorable Im Faela. That's Im Faela.
Honorable Chairperson, I'm covered.
Okay. No. Thank you very much. Lapskachne.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with concern that the slogan "Do not waste a good crisis" has created another vast corruptive network of supply chain opportunities, specifically with the delivery of services for COVID-19 related services. Further notes that an amount of about 3 million rand was paid to the Pathilisni Training Institute by the OR Tambo District Municipality for a door-to-door education campaign, allegedly without the required detailed reports. Also notes that apparently an amount of more than 12 million was paid to Ronocan by the supply for the supply of materials to Signal in Matata. The payment was done, but the material remains undelivered. Further notes that monies were paid for the delivery of tanks to Mshlotlu. Subcontractors received money to the amount of 3.5 million rand, but they did not participate in the project. Notes that the municipal manager called for an investigation by an independent investigator. That if the ANC government is serious about the impact of corruption on the lives and livelihoods of people, the provincial government of the Eastern Cape, as well as the National Minister of Kokta, Minister Dlamini Zuma, will initiate an independent investigation into these allegations immediately. I so move.
Thank you very much. There's the motion. Any objection?
Yes, objection.
There's an objection. The motion will therefore not be proceeded with, and it become a notice of a motion. The next speaker is going to be Honorable A. Arnold.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the economic freedom fighters without notice that the Council notes and condemn in the strongest term the brutal actions of the City of Cape Town, who mercilessly dragged a naked Mr. Bulelani Kolani from his shack in Kailitsa, Western Cape, in full view of his neighbors and later the whole country. Further notes that it is extremely disturbing that the City of Cape Town decided to embark on these extreme provocative actions of evicting people at a time of a national crisis when people's lives are hanging in the balance because of COVID-19. Affirms that the Western Cape is a home of all Africans too, and that no one should be treated in such an inhumane manner in the Western Cape. Reaffirms that these actions are prohibited under the state of national disaster, and we therefore call on the law enforcement agencies to act swiftly against all those involved in instructing and carrying out of evictions. I so move, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. There's the motion. Any objection? None. The motion is therefore agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Let's go to Honorable Mukause.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the Council notes the corruption by ANC government during COVID-19 pandemic. Further note that the ruling party public representatives at the municipal level had no mercy at all when coming to service delivery during this pandemic. This happened at the heart of a pandemic where they were supposed to deliver at least basic services to ordinary Black people in Black communities. Further knows that the ruling party showed no commitment at all in dealing with individuals who were found with their hands in distribution of food parcels, even though they were found to be stored in their own homes, even though they were found to be selling food parcels, specifically in the areas of Postmansberg in the Northern Cape, John Taolo Khaitseo Khasikhonyana in the Northern Cape. We further emphasize that the Minister of Kokta push harder sentences to these public representatives, and further state that the ANC government should actually wash their hands from these public representatives and send them home. Thank you.
There's a motion. Any objections?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's an objection, and this motion can therefore not be proceeded with.
Who
And
objected
we can,
on a point of order?
notice of a motion.
On a point of order? On a point
Yes.
of order?
That's a point of order.
I want to see the face of a person who objected, because that face actually demonstrates corruption at its best. Who objected to this?
Honorable Makausi, that's not the point of order. And I'm sure you know the person who objected. So you can pursue that kind of discussion outside of this city. The next person is going to be Debuko Modise.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council note that the Northwest Premier, Professor Tebogo Job Mokoro, has announced that he tested positive COVID-19 and is effectively in self-isolation. Premier Mokoro took a COVID-19 test on Monday following the passing of MEC of Cooperative Governance, Women's Settlement and Traditional Affairs, the late Mr. Mutibedi Gordon Kehakilwe. Further note that even though Premier Mokoro is in self-isolation, he is continuing to discharge his duties and lead the province response to the fight against COVID-19 while taking necessary precautions to self-isolate. The Council note that the Council wish to take this opportunity to wish Premier and MEC of Public Works and Roads, Mr. Saliva George Molapisi, as well as other honorable members like Honorable Mondi Kungubele and MEC Tasman Motara from Gauteng, who have also pronounced that they have tested positive while they discharging their official duty on, and wishes them good health and speed recovery. I so move, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. There's the motion. Any objection? No objection. The motion is therefore agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable members, that brings to the end the time allocated for motions without notice. I'm sure Honorable Ogamben and Bitoit will understand. We'll now move on to the next question, item. So proceed to the first order of the day, the consideration of a report of Select Committee on Finance. Announcement tablings and committee report 7 July 2020, the revised fiscal framework. I therefore, at this point, take the opportunity to call on Honorable Yunus Karim to present the committee report.
Thank you, Chairperson. If there's anything COVID-19 has taught, it is that we need to be modest and know that we don't know everything about any and everything. And we need to learn, well, we have to listen far more than we've done before to each other and learn far more. And whatever our differences, we have to work together like never before. Perhaps more, Chairperson, in our country than most. The task of reconstructing our society is gigantic, and it can't be done unless all of us play our parts. But for this, we need to avoid being dogmatic or rigid, and all of us whether we're in parliament, government, the trade unions, the private sector, and other sections of civil society, need to work together like never before, and we need to avoid polarizing our country. Which is not to say we must be like jellyfish, or that we must debate endlessly and take no action. It's to say that if we are to overcome the unprecedented havoc being wreaked by the COVID monster, we need to get as many people as possible on the same national side and manage our differences as far as possible. It was inevitable, Chairperson, that we would have our differences on the first COVID-related adjustments budget. But it wasn't inevitable that it should be so polarizing. It can't, as the president says, be business as usual. He wrote, as we note in our revised fiscal framework, which is tabled in the ATC today, Chairperson, and obviously we can only deal with a small part of it in this debate. He draws parallels, does the president, between the COVID-19 crisis and the post-1930s depression and post-World War II periods, and speaks of a more state-led growth path. Now, the DA and EFF were up in arms, Chairperson, about the committee's commitment to this. But the report also notes that the committee, and I quote from the report itself, firmly believes that the private sector has an utterly crucial role to play in our collective economic recovery, and that government should do everything possible to encourage them to play their full part. The committee is also aware of the weaknesses and inefficiencies of the state, and that this needs to be addressed urgently. But there clearly needs to be a new, more effective relationship between the state and the market, and with the state actually playing a far more active role in the economy than before, as part of a new approach to an effective developmental state. It has to ensure that macroeconomic policy suits developmental needs and fosters a balanced and inclusive economy. The report also goes on to note, Chairperson, and I quote, given the horrific poverty that a significant part of the population is confronting, and the considerable widening of the mainly racially defined inequalities in the country, the state has no choice but to intervene and must do so. It is not clear to the committee, we say, to what extent this special adjustments budget contributes to this, and the committee will pursue this further with National Treasury. So, Chairperson, there's no top-down state commander's notion of running the economy. No. It's a strategic and pragmatic approach that will be reviewed with practical experience of what actually works. So we're not saying it's all the state, and it certainly can't be all the private sector. We're saying it's both, but also the trade unions and civil society as a whole. Without the state, there will certainly be no development that reduces our grotesque inequalities, worsened substantially by the COVID horror. What we're going through now is obviously horrific, but what's looming, especially in our country, is far, far worse. And it'll be irresponsible for the state to be hands-off and leave it to the private sector to rescue us. And what's the big deal, Chairperson, we ask, about the state being involved? It's happening the world over, not least in the monetarist free market liberal democracies the state is in love with. The DA is in love with. The committee is aware that the special adjustments budget is a bridge to the October MTBPS and is in a way a transitional budget. But in the absence of a clear COVID-related economic growth framework within which to locate the special adjustments budget, it's very difficult to evaluate this budget, we know. But such an economic recovery plan, as is clear through the media and elsewhere, is being finalized right now by the majority party, and it will provide us with a guide as we go forward. Now, on the 21st of April 2020, the president announced a three-phase response. The first phase, of course, included tax relief, disaster relief funds, emergency procurement, wage support, and funding to small businesses. The second phase is, of course, the 500 billion social relief and economic support amounting to around 10% of the GDP. The special adjustments budget is part of the second phase, aimed at stabilizing the economy, address the extreme decline in supply and demand, and protect jobs. The committee looks forward to the third phase. This has not been fiscally provided for in the current special adjustments budget and will emerge through the 2020 MTBPS and of course the 2021 budget next year, the February. The committee sees that these three phases are interrelated. It's not clear to the committee to what extent the second phase contributes to the third. The recommendations in our report, only a few of which I can deal with here, provide a framework for how our committees will approach the budgets for the third phase. The committee stresses that it's acutely aware of a looming sovereign debt crisis and also wants to avoid that happening, as we recognize that ultimately it's the poor and low-income earners that will suffer disproportionately. The committee's views on special adjustments budget should not be seen, as we note in our report, as reckless, populist, uninformed, or naive. We have no spend, who cares where the money comes from approach, as the DA seems to think. The committee is painfully aware, we note, of the severe financial constraints of the country and the extreme unpredictability of the COVID-19 circumstances domestically and globally, and that the whole world, let alone our country, is in uncharted territory. So we're clear there are no easy answers, not from us as a committee, not from anybody, which is why in our report, we urge National Treasury to consult more with stakeholders and civil society, including those who disagree with it, and be less dogmatic, while ensuring, we stress, that the country doesn't sink into a populist cesspool from which we will never recover. And that's substantially National Treasury's responsibility, we understand. But National Treasury and government as a whole needs to appreciate that Parliament has a responsibility, Chairperson, as you know much more than I, a constitutional duty, in fact, to provide a platform and encourage the widest range of views to be freely expressed. So while the committee will continue to play this crucial role, we also request civil society stakeholders to engage in a give and take approach. None of us can be absolutely certain, not least stakeholders from civil society, that every proposal we make is absolutely correct. It can't be like that, Chairperson. It's an extremely unprecedented, extremely volatile situation. And all of us, not least civil society, needs to be more modest. And this applies to our committee and the chairperson of this committee. So, all of us have to be realistic about what we can do and what we know that is correct that we can do. Now, we also raised many other issues. Our concern, obviously, about job losses and the importance of the expanded public works program and the employment tax incentive to work far more effectively. We also want to know from Treasury in which sectors and what type of jobs will be created through the 100 billion for economic support measures for job creation. The committee welcomes the allocation of 3 billion for the land bank's recapitalization, but we're also aware that the land bank has failed quite disappointingly in the recent period. But of course, they're crucial. They're very strategic to our entire program on land and agriculture. So both Treasury and ourselves need to monitor the land bank far more rigorously, because they haven't done well in the recent past in respect of managing their finances and other aspects of the work. The committee also believes that a key aspect of government's economic recovery strategy has to
concluding, Honorable Karim.
Right. Basically, Chairperson, we worried about the 3.5% take up on the loan guarantees to small businesses. Treasury must come out and say what they've done about that. And finally, there are many other proposals that are in the ATC, and we welcome people's participation. Many of those issues, Chairperson, are being referred to the appropriations committees, which begin the work this evening, because they deal specifically with allocation of budgets to different programs. Thank you indeed for your time and the committee's time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Karim. I now put the question. The question is that the report be agreed to. But before we proceed to voting, I shall now allow for provinces to make their comment in relation to iteration. So now is the opportunity to make iterations of vote in terms of Rule 71, if they so wish. Provinces, Eastern Cape, Free State.
Free State is in support.
No. We're not voting yet. Iteration.
Oh,
We want to make a iteration.
No, it's fine, Chair.
Okay, Gauteng.
No declaration, Chairperson.
No declaration. KwaZulu-Natal.
No declaration, sir.
Limpopo.
No declaration, Chair.
Mpumalanga.
No declaration, Chair. We're fine.
Northern Cape.
No
No
declaration,
declaration,
Chair.
Chair.
Northwest.
No
No
declaration,
declaration, Chair, from
No
Northwest.
declaration. Western Cape.
Honorable Chair, I do have a declaration, yes?
Please proceed.
Honorable Chairperson, the lockdown has increased our enormous socio-economic problems, which will have long-lasting negative effects on service delivery, poverty, and unemployment. In order to obtain a primary balance by 2024, a full-blown sovereign debt crisis must be avoided at all costs. This will only be achieved if we create an environment that is conducive to economic growth. Growth should be the precondition for fixing our public finances and for addressing poverty and unemployment. South Africa's endless additional borrowing will result in even less resources for service delivery as well as for dealing with the effects of poverty. Relief measures such as the 200 billion rand guaranteed loan scheme must be deployed at a faster rate. Government's failure to speedily implement the response program, as well as the disastrous non-payment of the additional temporary grant, has again shown the inadequacy of our government's lack of capacity to deliver. The inability to ensure access to all who are in need of support, as well as the inability to display good governance, is made even worse by the ANC's government's policy of cadre deployment and asset prescription, which are blocking the path to sustainable economic growth. The Western Cape does not support this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to Eastern Cape. Honorable Mvoko.
No declaration, Chair.
What declaration? I saw hand raise function there. Hand being up. But thank you, Muyo. There's someone trying to speak at the background there. Can I find out who it is? Thank you very much. Honorable members, having gone through the declaration, we shall now proceed to the voting on the question. And the question, if I may repeat again, is that the report be agreed to. And now call upon provinces to cast their votes in relation to the question. We'll call upon heads of delegation to indicate whether they are voting in favor, against, or abstain. We'll do so in alphabetical order. We'll start with the Eastern Cape.
The Eastern Cape is in support.
Eastern Cape support. Yeah. The Free State.
Free State supports, Chair.
Support. Gauteng.
Gauteng supports.
Gauteng supports. KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal iyayeseka umbiko sihlalo.
KwaZulu-Natal iyayeseka.
KZN supports the report.
Limpopo supports the report.
Limpopo supports the report. Thank you very much. Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga support, Chair.
Support the report. Northern Cape.
Northern Cape supports, Honorable Chair.
Support the report. Northwest.
Northwest supports the report, Chair.
Northwest Sam Chairperson.
Yes, STEM SAM and support. Western Cape.
Western Cape does not support.
That's man.
Must consult.
Cape does not support the report. Voting is now closed. The indication I have is that 8 provinces supports the report. They voted in favor, and only one province, the Western Cape, did not support. I therefore declare the report adopted in accordance with Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable members, we'll now move to the next item. The next item basically indicates that there's no other business. And that being the case, honorable delegates, that concludes the business of the day, and the House is now adjourned. Thank you very much. So we respond.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Very good, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson Karim as well.
Siyabonga, Stan.
Siyaseka manje siqedile. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Siyabonga Chairperson nathi emakhaya.
Mkiva.
Yeah.
No Sabule.
Amako.
Mkiva.
Long live the Chairperson and the Deputy Chairperson.
Long live. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief Whip.
Thank you, Advocate.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Baie dankie, adjunct voorsitter. Plezier, advocaat.
Precies.
Adjunct President. Adjunct Chairperson harap pusat.
Jandu.
Nkokheli yami.
Siyajabula mokusebenzwa nje.
Siyabulela.
Chief Whip.
Advocate.
Advocate.
How are you, Chief Whip? Programming Whip.
Oh, apology to interrupt, ne? My background, is there anybody who can assist me with my background?
I can, yeah.
Ravi, can you ask?
Yes, Alice is honorable, Jaru, yeah.
All right.
Oh, Jadu. Yeah, you must cry loud. You must be assisted.
Yes. Yes.
Chief Whip.
Yeah, Advocate. Yes.
We have resolved the issue of the fourth with the committees, with the chairpersons of those two committees.
The program for the meetings. Yeah, I saw that thing. Committees.
Yeah, remember that there were two committees which intended to meet on the 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have resolved it.
Those that you must consider before the debates, ne?
Yeah, those ones are resolved.
Yes.
There were two committees that wanted to meet on the 4th when we have a sitting or after
I see. Okay, I see that one that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, they have since considered that they will meet in the next term.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great.
So the program is programming whip. So the program is more or less settled.
Done now.
Yeah.
Okay. No. We'll connect. We'll connect. I'm still around. Okay.
Yeah. Are you around Cape Town?
Yeah, I operate from Parliament. I operate from Cape Town. We are right in the eye of the storm.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. We're going to move to the waiting room.
Okay. No, Amar, thanks, Advocate.
Let
The
me
program is
up
going
in
on well.
Honorable
Yeah.
Njadu quickly. Can I just
I'm
help
gonna
him
give
put
you
his?
one.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Honorable Njadu, can I help you quickly with your background?
Yeah, once and for all, Jadu must have the background forever now. Hey.
Now he's got a super fast internet connection, so he's all ready to go. You want to turn your video on, Honorable Njadu? You've got your video off at the moment.
Okay, I can turn
I'm
it
going
on.
to design a background and put in my wall here in the house.
Live on YouTube, please.
Okay,
Parliament background. I need a banner. I need a banner.
Have you got Honorable Njadu, have you got the background downloaded to your MacBook? Is it saved on
Normally,
your
there
MacBook?
in communications, they've got parliament banners. Shelly has them. Muloto has those things plenty.
Okay. Yes, must I get into the? Yes, I've saved it.
You saved it. Okay. Can you see where it says stop video on your bottom on you? You see there's a
Yes.
little arrow there. Can you see it?
I see it.
Right next to it. Just click on that arrow.
Yes, I've clicked.
And choose and click on choose virtual background.
Okay, I've clicked.
Right. Now you can see your video, and right below it on the right, there's a plus sign there.
On the right.
Yeah, just to the right, there's a plus sign with a little